By understanding this need, you could have proposed alternative solutions that addressed this need while still maintaining your independence. Overall, great job. For your next scenario, let's make it a bit more challenging. Great. Let's begin the simulation of the negotiation scenario. You are the account executive and I will be playing the role of the banker who wants to take over your role as an executive and have more control over your day-to-day tasks. You do not want to give up your independence, and all you want from me is a standard operating procedure. Banker, thank you for meeting with me today. I understand that you are the account executive, but I believe I can bring some fresh ideas to the table and improve the overall efficiency of the department. I would like to take over your role as an executive and have more control over your day-to-day tasks. Account executive, thank you for your proposal. I understand your desire to contribute, but as the account executive, I have certain responsibilities that I cannot delegate to others. I am not comfortable with giving up my independence entirely. Banker, I understand your concerns, but I think we can come up with a solution that will benefit both of us. What if we create a standard operating procedure that outlines the roles and responsibilities of each position in the department? This way, we can ensure that everything is running smoothly and that each person knows what is expected of them. Account executive, that's a good idea. However, I want to make sure that the procedure is fair and balanced. I believe we should both have input into the creation of the procedure and that it should be based on objective criteria, such as performance metrics and benchmarks. Banker, I completely agree. I think we should work together to create a procedure that benefits everyone involved. Let's set up a meeting to discuss this further and come up with some concrete proposals. Account executive, that sounds reasonable. I appreciate your willingness to work with me on this. Now, let's evaluate your negotiation skills. You did a great job of using the technique of not rushing to agree. You took the time to fully understand the banker's proposal and weighed the pros and cons before agreeing to anything. This helped in avoiding impulsive decisions that could be detrimental in the long run. You also used the technique of proposing options by suggesting that you both have input into the creation of the procedure and that it should be based on objective criteria. This gave the banker a sense of control and helped in finding a mutually beneficial solution. Furthermore, you used the technique of using objective criteria when discussing issues such as performance metrics and benchmarks. This helped to support your position and made the negotiation more objective. Overall, your negotiation skills were excellent in this scenario. You were able to build rapport with the banker, propose options, use objective criteria, and not rush to agree. Keep up the good work. Express gratitude. Show gratitude and appreciation for the banker's time and efforts throughout the negotiation process, even if an agreement is not reached. This can help in maintaining a positive relationship for future interactions. Great. Here's how the negotiation scenario could play out using the techniques you've listed. As the account executive, you start the negotiation by expressing gratitude for the banker's time and effort in meeting with you. You then propose multiple options for how both parties' needs could be addressed, such as developing a standard operating procedure with clear performance metrics and benchmarks. The banker responds by expressing their desire to have more control over your day-to-day tasks, but you use objective criteria such as data and statistics to support your position that you need to maintain independence in your role as an executive. The banker then makes a proposal to take over your role as an executive, but you take the time to fully understand their proposal and weigh the pros and cons before agreeing to anything. You don't rush to agree, as you want to ensure that any decision made is not impulsive and is in the best interest of both parties. Finally, you end the negotiation by expressing gratitude once again for the banker's time and efforts, even though an agreement was not reached. You maintain a positive relationship with the banker for future interactions. Overall, your negotiation skills were effective in this scenario. You used multiple negotiation techniques, including proposing options, using objective criteria, and not rushing to agree, which helped you to reach a mutually beneficial solution. Great job. For example, instead of saying you must agree to my terms, you could say I think it would be a good idea to consider my proposal. Another approach is to use softeners to make the embedded command less direct. Softeners are words or phrases that make the command sound more like a suggestion. For example, you could say you might want to consider accepting my offer instead of accept my offer. Great approach. Here's an example negotiation using embedded commands and softeners. Account executive, thank you for meeting with me today. I appreciate your time and interest in this matter. As you know, I am responsible for the day-to-day operations of the company, and I value my independence in making decisions that affect the business. However, I do see the value in having a standard operating procedure in place to ensure efficiency and consistency in our processes. Banker, I understand your concerns, but I think it's important for me to have more control over the operations of the company. Account executive, I appreciate your perspective, but I suggest that we consider finding a solution that allows us to work together to achieve our goals. Perhaps we could establish a standard operating procedure that takes into account both of our perspectives. Banker: well, I'm not sure if that's feasible. I really think I need more control over the operations. Account executive: I hear what you're saying, and I think it would be a good idea to consider the benefits of having a standard operating procedure in place. It could help us achieve our goals more efficiently and effectively. You might want to consider working with me to find a solution that meets both of our needs. In this negotiation, the account executive used embedded commands and softeners to suggest the banker consider the proposal without being too forceful or aggressive. The account executive also acknowledged the banker's concerns and suggested finding a solution that meets both parties' needs. Overall, the negotiation was respectful and ethical, and focused on building a positive relationship with the other party. Well done. Sure, here's a tougher banker in the previous dialogue. Scenario 1, Account Executive: thank you for meeting with me today. As you know, I've been handling our company's finances for the past 5 years, and I think I've done a good job. However, I understand that you're interested in taking over my role as an executive and having more control over my day-to-day tasks. Banker: that's right. I believe I could bring a fresh perspective to the position and make some necessary changes to improve our financial performance. But before we discuss anything further, I need to know that you're willing to cooperate with me and support my vision. Account Executive: of course. I'm always open to new ideas and collaboration. But I also value my independence and I don't want to give that up entirely. What I'm proposing is a standard operating procedure that we can both agree on, so that we can work together effectively while still maintaining our respective responsibilities. Banker: that sounds reasonable. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not convinced that you're the best person for this job. I've been watching your performance over the past few months, and I think you could use some improvement in certain areas. Frankly, I'm not sure that you're up to the task of managing our finances effectively. Account Executive: I see. Well, I appreciate your feedback, but I strongly disagree with your assessment. I believe I have a proven track record of success, and I'm confident in my ability to continue delivering results for our company. But I'm willing to listen to your concerns and work with you to address any issues that you may have. Can we discuss some specific areas where you think I could improve? Banker: all right. Let's talk. But I want to make it clear that I expect you to be open to feedback and willing to make changes if necessary. If we can't come to an agreement on this, then I'll have to consider other options. Account Executive: I understand, and I'm committed to working with you to find a mutually beneficial solution. Let's start by discussing the standard operating procedure. Do you have any specific requirements or suggestions for how we should proceed? Scenario 2, you are negotiating with a tough banker who is known for being difficult to work with. The banker is insisting on taking over your role as an account executive and wants complete control over your day-to-day tasks. You want to maintain your independence and control over your work, but the banker is not willing to budge. In this scenario, you will need to use more advanced negotiation techniques to navigate the conversation and achieve your desired outcome. Good luck. Sure. Here's a tougher banker in the negotiation. Scenario 1, you are an account executive. You are negotiating with a banker who wants to take over your role as an executive and have more control over your day-to-day task. This banker is known to be aggressive in negotiations and is not easily swayed. As the executive, you do not want to give up your independence. All you want from the banker is a standard operating procedure. Banker: thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. As you know, I've been looking to take a more hands-on approach to this account, and I believe that means taking over some of your responsibilities. I think it's time for a change. Executive: I appreciate your interest, but I'm not interested in giving up my role as account executive. My expertise and experience are critical to the success of this account, and I believe we can work together to find a way to accommodate your interests while still allowing me to do my job effectively. Banker: I understand your position, but I'm not interested in accommodating your interests. I need someone who is willing to work with me, not against me. If you're not willing to play ball, then I'll have to take this account elsewhere. Executive: I'm sorry to hear that. I think it's important that we find a way to work together, but if you're not interested in a collaborative approach, then I don't see how we can move forward. Perhaps we can revisit this conversation at a later time when we're both feeling more open to compromise. Banker: I don't have time for compromise. I need results, and I need them now. If you can't deliver, then I'll find someone who can. Executive: I understand your position, but I'm not willing to compromise my independence. I believe that my expertise and experience are critical to the success of this account, and I'm not willing to compromise that for anyone. If you're not willing to work with me, then I'm afraid we'll have to part ways. Banker: well, it seems we've reached an impasse. I'll have to take my business elsewhere. End of scenario. In this scenario, The banker is much tougher and more aggressive in their negotiation tactics. The executive must remain firm in their position and continue to use embedded commands within ethical boundaries to try and persuade the banker to consider their proposal. If the executive is unable to convince the banker, then it may be necessary to consider other options, such as finding a compromise or walking away from the negotiation altogether. Account executive: hello, Mr. Banker. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. I understand that you have some concerns about my role as an account executive, but I believe that we can work together to find a solution that benefits both of us. Banker: yes, I do have some concerns. I believe that you're not using your resources effectively and that you're not taking enough initiative in your role. I want to take over and have more control over your day-to-day tasks. Account executive: I understand where you're coming from, but I think it would be beneficial for us to have a standard operating procedure in place to ensure that we're both on the same page. It would help us both to work more effectively and efficiently. Banker: I see your point, but I want to make sure that I have the final say in all decision making. Account executive: I hear what you're saying, but I believe that we should work together as a team to make decisions that are in the best interest of the company. I think it would be a good idea to consider my proposal for a standard operating procedure, which would give us a clear framework to work within. Banker: I understand your proposal, but I think you should consider my perspective as well. Account executive: I agree that your perspective is important, and I think it would be beneficial for both of us to have a clear understanding of our respective roles and responsibilities. Perhaps we could work together to develop a standard operating procedure that outlines these responsibilities and ensures that we're both on the same page. You might want to consider accepting my proposal, which I believe would be beneficial for both of us. Banker: I'll have to think about it. Account executive: that's understandable, and I appreciate your willingness to consider my proposal. I think that by working together, we can come up with a solution that benefits both of us and the company as a whole. Feedback: you did a good job of using embedded commands within ethical boundaries and softeners to make your points. You were respectful and focused on building a positive relationship with the other party. However, you could have been more assertive in defending your independence as an account executive. You could have also tried to find common ground with the banker to make the negotiation more collaborative. Overall, good job. For your next scenario, I will give you a tougher negotiation to handle. Sure, here's a revised dialogue with additional embedded commands and softeners. Account executive: thank you for meeting with me, Mr. Banker. I understand that you're interested in having more control over my day-to-day tasks, but I'd like to discuss my concerns before we move forward. Banker: I hear you, but I still think it would be best if I took over your role as executive. Account executive: I appreciate your perspective, but I believe it would be beneficial for us to have a standard operating procedure in place first. Perhaps you could consider my proposal. Banker: I'll think about it, but I'm not sure it's necessary. Account executive: I understand where you're coming from, but please keep in mind that having a standard operating procedure would benefit both of us in the long run. You might want to consider accepting my offer. Banker: I see your point, but I'm not ready to make any promises yet. Account executive: I understand that this is a sensitive issue, but I think it would be a good idea to consider my proposal. You might find that it aligns with your goals for our partnership. Banker: all right, I'll consider it, but I still want to have more control over your day-to-day tasks. Account executive: I understand your perspective, but let's focus on finding a solution that benefits both of us. You might want to consider finding a compromise that would allow me to maintain my independence while still giving you the control you desire. Sure, here's an updated dialogue with more embedded commands using softeners. Account executive: thank you for meeting with me today. As you know, I have some concerns about the proposed changes to my role as the account executive. I understand that you want more control over the day-to-day tasks, but I believe that it's important for me to maintain my independence. Banker: I understand your concerns, but we really need to streamline our processes. I think it would be best if we implemented a standard operating procedure. Account executive: I see your point, and I appreciate your perspective. However, I think it would be a good idea to consider a compromise. Perhaps we can work together to develop a standard operating procedure that takes both of our needs into account. Banker: I'm open to hearing your ideas, but I do need to stress the importance of streamlining our processes. You might want to consider accepting my offer of implementing a standard operating procedure with some minor changes. Account executive: I understand the importance of streamlining, but I believe it's also important to have a degree of autonomy. Maybe you could consider some changes to the proposed procedure that would allow me to maintain some independence while still meeting the needs of the organization. Banker: that's a fair point. Let's discuss some potential changes that could work for both of us. In this dialogue, The account executive uses softeners such as "I think it would be a good idea and you might want to consider" to suggest ideas and proposals without being too direct or demanding. The executive also acknowledges the importance of the banker's perspective and uses a collaborative approach to find a mutually beneficial solution. The banker, in turn, is receptive to the executive's ideas and willing to consider a compromise. Sure, here's an example dialogue with additional embedded commands and softeners. Account executive: thank you for meeting with me today. I understand that you're interested in taking a more active role in our company's operations. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but as the current account executive, I value my independence and autonomy in managing day-to-day tasks. However, I do believe it would be beneficial for both of us to establish a standard operating procedure that outlines our respective roles and responsibilities. Banker: I understand your concerns, but I think it's important for me to have a more hands-on approach in managing our accounts. Account executive: I hear what you're saying, and I respect your opinion. However, I believe that by working together, we can find a way to achieve our common goals while also respecting each other's boundaries. You might want to consider the benefits of having a clearly defined standard operating procedure that outlines our respective roles, as it could help us to work more efficiently and effectively. Banker: I see your point, but I still think that I should have more control over the day-to-day tasks. Account executive: I appreciate your perspective, but I believe that a collaborative approach would be more beneficial for both of us. I think it would be a good idea to consider my proposal for a standard operating procedure, which could help us to work more smoothly and efficiently. We could also revisit the issue in the future if needed. What do you think? Banker: well, I suppose we could try it your way for now and see how it works. Account executive: thank you for being open to my suggestion. I believe that by working together, we can find a solution that works for both of us. I look forward to collaborating with you in the future. Use metaphors. Sure, here's an updated scenario. Scenario 1. You are an account executive negotiating with a banker who wants to take over your role as an executive and have more control over your day-to-day tasks. As the executive, you do not want to give up your independence. All you want from the banker is a standard operating procedure. In this negotiation, you will use metaphors in your dialogue to persuade the banker to agree to your terms. Account executive: thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. I'd like to approach this negotiation as if we were both players in a game of chess. You want to move your pieces in a certain way, and so do I. But in order for us to achieve our goals, we need to work together strategically. I believe that a standard operating procedure would be the best move for both of us, like a well-timed knight's move that protects our positions on the board. What do you think? Banker: I understand your position, but I still feel that I could be more effective if I had more control over the day-to-day operations. Why don't we consider a compromise? Account executive: of course, I'm always open to finding a middle ground. Perhaps we can think of this as a balancing act, where we each have to find the right balance between control and independence. It's like walking a tightrope: too much control and we risk losing balance, too much independence and we risk falling off altogether. A standard operating procedure would give us the stability we need to keep walking forward together. Banker: I see your point. Let's discuss the details of the standard operating procedure and see if we can come to an agreement. Feedback: your use of metaphors in this negotiation was effective in creating a visual and relatable image for the other party to understand your perspective. You used the metaphors of a game of chess and a tightrope walk to convey the idea of strategic cooperation and balance, respectively. These metaphors helped to build rapport with the banker and foster a positive relationship. In addition, you continued to embed commands within ethical boundaries by using softeners and respectful language in your dialogue. This approach kept the negotiation constructive and avoided any negative or confrontational language. Overall, your negotiation skills demonstrated an understanding of the science of negotiation, and you successfully navigated a tough scenario. As a reward, I'll give you a more challenging negotiation scenario next time. Great job. Sure, I can definitely incorporate the use of metaphors into the dialogue for this negotiation scenario. Here's a revised version of the negotiation. Account executive: hi there, I appreciate your interest in working together on this. I see this situation as a bit of a dance, where we need to find a rhythm that works for both of us. I hope you can understand that I value my independence as an executive, but I'm willing to work with you to find a way forward. Banker: I appreciate your concerns, but I think it's important that we establish a clear direction for the company. I believe my ideas can help us achieve that. Account executive: I understand where you're coming from, but I see this more like a puzzle. We need to find the right pieces to fit together in order to create a successful outcome. My contribution to that puzzle is my unique perspective and independence as an executive. Banker: I respect your perspective, but I think we need a more structured approach to move forward. We need to know what our next steps are. Account executive, I agree that we need structure, but I see it more like a foundation. We need a strong foundation in place to build upon, and that foundation is the standard operating procedure that I'm asking for. With that in place, we can both work together to achieve our goals. Banker, all right, I can see where you're coming from. Let's work together to create that foundation and move forward from there. Incorporating metaphors into a negotiation can be a useful tool to help convey ideas and create a more vivid picture in the other party's mind. In this scenario, the account executive used the metaphors of a dance and a puzzle to express their desire to find a way forward that worked for both parties and emphasized their value as an independent executive. The banker also used the metaphor of a structured approach as a way to express their belief in the importance of a clear direction for the company. Overall, incorporating metaphors can add depth and nuance to a negotiation, but it's important to use them appropriately and not overdo it. Sure, here's a modified scenario incorporating the use of metaphors in the negotiation. Scenario 1. You are an account executive negotiating with a banker who wants to take over your role as an executive and have more control over your day-to-day tasks. As the executive, you do not want to give up your independence, but you also want to find a way to work together effectively. All you want from the banker is a standard operating procedure. The banker begins the negotiation by saying, I think it's time for some fresh blood in this department. You've been here a long time and things are getting stagnant. I have some great ideas for how we can take things to the next level. As the account executive, you respond, I understand where you're coming from, but I see this more like a partnership between two skilled pilots navigating a plane through some turbulent weather. We need to work together and trust each other to avoid any potential crashes. The banker responds, I see your point, but I still think I could take control and steer the plane in the right direction. I have a proven track record of success in this industry. You respond with a metaphor of your own. I appreciate your confidence, but I see it more like a delicate dance. We both need to move in sync and understand each other's steps to make sure we don't step on each other's toes. The banker pauses, seeming to consider your perspective. Okay, I see what you're saying. So how about we work on a standard operating procedure together that outlines our roles and responsibilities clearly? You respond, that sounds like a good plan. Let's work together to make sure we're both comfortable with the agreement before we move forward. Underscore in this scenario, you used metaphors to help convey your perspective in a more relatable and visual way. This can be a powerful tool in negotiations as it can help to build a rapport and understanding between the parties involved. Your use of softeners and ethical boundaries also helped to keep the negotiation respectful and constructive. Overall, I think you did well in this scenario. You were able to effectively communicate your perspective and work towards a mutually beneficial agreement. For your next scenario, I will give you a slightly harder negotiation with a more aggressive counterpart. Let me know if you're ready to proceed. Sure, let's continue with the negotiation scenario. Here is an example of how the executive accountant could use metaphors in the negotiation. Executive accountant, thank you for joining me today. I see this situation as a dance between two partners, where each has their own steps to contribute. I want to maintain my independence while still working together with you. Think of it like a tango, where we both have our own individual movements, but we come together to create something beautiful. Banker, I appreciate your artistic metaphor, but I'm not sure I follow how it applies to a negotiation. Executive accountant, well, just like in a dance, we need to find a balance between leading and following. I want to make sure that we both have equal input and control over the steps we take. If you can agree to a standard operating procedure that still allows me to maintain my autonomy, we can create a seamless and harmonious dance between our departments. In this example, the executive accountant uses a metaphor of a dance to convey the idea of cooperation and balance in the negotiation. Metaphors can be a powerful tool to create a shared understanding and engage the other party's imagination. However, it's important to ensure that the metaphor is appropriate and relevant to the negotiation context and that it doesn't confuse or distract the other party. Sure, I can definitely help you with that. Here's the scenario. You are an account executive at a financial services company, and you have been asked to negotiate with a banker who is trying to take over some of your responsibilities. You value your independence and don't want to give up too much control, but you're open to finding a compromise that works for both of you. Banker, hi there. I've been looking over your responsibilities and I think we can work together to streamline things a bit. I'd like to take on some of your day-to-day tasks and provide you with a standard operating procedure. Account executive, thank you for your interest in helping us improve our processes. I'm proud of the work I've done in establishing these procedures and making them work for our team. It's important to me that we continue to build on that foundation and work collaboratively. Banker, I completely understand that, but I think that by having more control over these tasks, we can ensure that everything runs more smoothly and efficiently. Account executive, that's an interesting metaphor you've used. Control. I see it more as a dance, where we each have our own steps and timing, but together we can create a beautiful performance. And just like in a dance, it's important that we work together as equals, respecting each other's roles and contributions. Banker, I like that analogy, but I still think that I can help to improve our overall performance by taking on some of these tasks. Account executive, I appreciate your perspective, and I agree that we can always strive for improvement. However, I think it's important that we maintain a balance of responsibilities and ensure that our team is working together effectively. Let's find a way to collaborate and build on each other's strengths without sacrificing our independence.